5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. As always, I'm your host, Mike Murray. Today, I am joined by my associate head coach, Dan Burke from Victor, New York. And we are thrilled today to have our guest, Coach Brian Barnes from NC State, joining us today on the program. NC State, one of the hottest programs in the NCAA over the last 5 years. Brian has extensive experience from many different collegiate posts that he's been at, as well as coaching at the club level. And today we're going to talk about cultivating a culture of positivity, developing a team culture that is geared towards long-term and short-term success. And Brian, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, I was talking to Coach Brett Hawke over the weekend, and I said, I know you worked with Brian a little bit. Tell me a little bit about Coach Barnes. Tell me some things I might not know. And this was all through text message, and Brett called me. And he said, listen, man, actually he said, listen, mate, I'm going to tell you that Brian gave me the best education I could have had going into college coaching. He's like, we shared an office together. I watched everything he did. I watched the way he talked on the phone. I watched the way he talked to the athletes. So Brett Hawke gave you one of the best reviews that one of your coaches could possibly give you. And I wanted to kick off the program that way because I know you'd be happy to hear that.
Well, it's kind of Brett. We had a lot of fun when we were two years together at Auburn. He tried to pick me off a couple times after I left, but it just was never in the cards. You know, he's a terrific person, terrific coach, and we just had a blast working together, and it was always centered around swimming, right? That was the fun part. What are you thinking? You know, he would write something up. What do you think of this? And we just share ideas and or swap athletes on any particular day, whatever it came down to. But it's very kind of him to say that. So I'm a little bit humbled hearing that from him.
Well, I'm glad I had the opportunity to share that with you. And when Dan and I were thinking about, you know, who we want to have as a guest, we had talked about you for a long time. You've been a part of a lot of different programs that have had great championship culture. You just talked about Auburn a little bit, and you were able to work there with both Coach Marsh and with Coach Quick. I got to meet Coach Quick at the end of his tenure at Stanford. I went to Stanford swim camp as a volunteer assistant coach and got to learn a lot there. But that championship culture at Auburn during the time that you were there, it was just a dominating program at the time, not only in the sprints, people get wrapped up in that, but there were some top-notch athletes across the board in every event. What is something special that both Coach Marsh and Coach Quick brought to the table in terms of developing a culture where everyone was important as anyone? That was something that I remember Richard saying a lot at Stanford.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you can't really compare and contrast them, right? Because they're both extraordinary coaches. I always, you know, David, when he hired me, I always say I caught them in the gravy years, right? I didn't catch David. I mean, I was part, I think, of 4 of his 12 that he won, and including his last collegiate win in his last meet as a collegiate coach. And for him, I'm just moved that I was a part of that effort to send him out the way he went out collegiately. He had an enormous ability to read a situation, and his instincts were spot on. He would trust your judgment, but when it was a hot topic, whether it was a relay or the order of a relay or or a conference team or whatever, his instincts were tremendous. and his ability to see the big picture, right? Of the program. I learned he understood how to get people qualified for that meet. And it wasn't just about the conference meet. It was anywhere you can do it. I can remember my second year there was people we didn't even take to the conference meet that went to the NCAAs. And it was by choice, right? Because our best conference meet team was better or different than our best NCAA team. And he just understood the big picture. He allowed his coaches to coach, which was terrific. Richard, I always say, if you were on deck with Richard Quick, you're coaching for second place. And he just knew exactly what to do on any given day. He rarely, he never pulled out a weekly plan, and he believed, and he was convincing. He didn't settle for anything less than excellence. And you look at his whole recruiting career at Stanford, and mind you, it is Stanford, but if it was the #1 recruit in the country, he went out and he got Jenny Thompson, and he got Janet Evans, and he got Summer Sanders. He was extraordinary in the living room, and extraordinary. He backed it up. There's just no way. He was 6-time Olympic coach, 4-time head coach, and usually when he led those teams, they came home with a large medal haul. And so it was the similarity, I would say, is probably more personal, meaning they were genuine. They're both. David's a kind person, genuine person. He is in it for the right reasons. It was never about David. It was never about Richard. It was always about the athlete. You glean a lot as an assistant coach from their behavior. And I'm at times I do have a pinch me moment when I look at, who I've worked with and who I'm working with now. And one of the things I noticed about NC State when I first got here was, Coach Holloway and his organization. And I can remember saying to myself, this is going to be real fun because it's Richard Quick hard. Meaning challenging is the best way to say it. The expectation is set, and it's all an application. What we see and how we apply what we know, and everything has a purpose. It's pretty cool.
You mentioned so many times in talking about those two coaches' relationships, right? And I think right now, from a social media standpoint and from just a societal standpoint, when we watch a television show like Ted Lasso, and we see this character developing these relationships with all of these athletes, that's what I'm hearing you say about both David and both Richard. You mentioned something about Richard saying, he believed. And there's a famous sign in Ted Lasso right above the office that says believe. And I remember Richard saying at swim camp, believe in belief. And that was a famous quote that I know he used to say a lot.
He said it, and I don't know when you went to camp with him, but he said, believe in belief over and over. And it's true. It is, he taught me just how to be convincing. Right. I always say, when we talk about culture and talk about energy and things like that, I often say, I'm never gonna, if I'm working with an athlete, I'm never gonna tell you something you can't do. Right. And I really sincerely believe it. If it's coming out of my mouth, I believe it. Now, you have to convince the athlete. Yeah. And sometimes it's grandiose, but how do you get somebody from 59.2 to 57.9 on a breaststroke, right? Right. Well, you got to plant the seed, and you have to start there. Trust is time spent, and it's the foundation of really, it's the foundation of what I've learned here so far. What we do, we spend time, we take the time, we set up meetings, we talk to the athletes, and it doesn't even need to be. It could be 5 minutes after practice. Just checking in. Where are you? How's things going? And understanding where they are in their lives, and making it about them. And once you get them to trust, my first year here, I often say, just get them on the porch and don't make any big movements, right? Or they'll scatter. As athletes, you don't want to come on too strong. But ultimately, it's a path, right? And it's all based on evidence. If you can see something in the water, then you're like, okay. As a coach, you have to have an imagination for them to have an imagination. I believe that. Yeah, and
I love it. I love it. When you first got the job there, I was on a meeting with Coach Wadley and Braden. And Braden was saying, I've learned so much in the first week that Brian Barnes has been on our pool deck. And how did you, coming from a different place, how did you ingratiate yourself to that NC State culture? Because one of the things that I appreciated both as a coach and as the stepfather and of an athlete who swam there was that it seemed like they were having fun all the time. It seemed like they were having fun on the tough days. And I know that's not the whole picture, but that's kind of what resonates there at NC State is it looks like you guys are having fun all the time. Yeah. Coach Bernardino would text me some things that the athlete was doing really, really well. You have great connections with these club coaches. How did you insert yourself into this culture?
Well, it wasn't difficult, right? I don't know what my former athletes would say about me, but I would say fun has been always has been a key ingredient to what I do. And it's just, once again, it's just building that trust. If they get to know you a little bit as a person, they don't need to know you personally, but if they get to know who you are, where your heart really lies, then they'll do anything for you. And yeah, there's days when it's almost too much fun. If it's a recovery workout, and I've done it for years, I bring in like a little child's toy, and I did it last week. We did a recovery, and I had this little Batman that was just floating around the pool, and every time they would stop, they would look around for it. It's silly, but it was something. Or I wrote the workout on basically a piece of paper that was the size of a postage stamp. Here you go. This is the smallest workout I've ever written, and it's corny, but I think it's very important to understand the stress that they are under and where they are in their lives, because it's important. Their schoolwork's important. Their performance in the pool is important to them. And the undertone is teaching work ethic and attitude and divorcing yourself from results and engaging in who you are, getting them to understand how I evaluated it, how this is. And I ran through it this morning. It's January. We just had people all over the world, right? People at World Champs. We had people, a young lady get mono. And so we're just kind of scattered, and it's all going to come together because every season's messy. But, my conversation with one of my athletes was, if we can get you to focus on your motivation, your work ethic, your approach, and your attitude all through this very hard workout, and divorce yourself from what your times are today, then I will know exactly where you are. But if we're wrapped up and this isn't going well, and you let it nosedive, if you let go of how you got here, right? And you get here because you're fast. You got here because you work your butt off. And it's just those things that ultimately, then they believe, right? You get them to that point.
Boy, Dan, we could get Coach Barnes on deck for a day or two, couldn't we?
That's what I was just gonna say. I know a lot of people that could use those words.
Brian, we're getting through some of the toughest training, as we mentioned to you, in pre-production right now. We're excited about where this group is headed, but certainly you mentioned some things that I think are important touchstones for especially the young coaches who are learning, like Dan and many others to come. You talked about the fact that the athletes are doing some really challenging things, whether it's in the pool, in the classroom, growing as an adult, living on their own for the first time. One of the things that's been talked about a lot in coaching circles is the uniqueness of the NC State training schedule. And I know that one of the things that Michaela especially appreciated as a student athlete was the Wednesday off. Talk about the Wednesday afternoon off and how Braden is really aware of a lot of those things that you mentioned and why that's important to your team culture.
It's, rest and recovery. It's one of the things that attracted me. When I was interviewing, I looked at it through the lens of my personal life. I have 2 kids. What time is practice over? And so I got that, and then, so he went through the schedule, and immediately when he said the schedule, Wednesday morning off, Thursday morning off, or Wednesday night off, Thursday morning off. I'm like, okay, this is a recovery-based team. Because my core belief is if it's worth doing once, it's worth doing twice. That's a Richard Quick. If it's worth doing once a week, it's worth doing twice a week, right? I mean, you have to. You can't, some things I do every 10 days. It depends on what it is. And so there you are. Recovery on Wednesday night, recovery on Thursday morning. That's a full 36 hours before we're going to be good on Wednesday. Now I could push you on Wednesday morning, on the 5th workout of the week, and I could push you on Thursday night, with knowing what's going on. And sometimes those workouts ultimately, and we're getting close, where we will add those as either a Wednesday morning or Thursday night. I know some people are going to recover tomorrow night too, but we'll swim. I also believe that it's very hard to recover the same day you're in the weight room, right? And so you could recover after. So we lift in the morning on a Wednesday, and we're recovering all the way through Thursday PM. So it's about 36 hours. And your muscles need to repair. You just need to repair. And it's just, it's been a belief of mine. And I think, a lot of it is centered around, when did we compete? We compete Thursday, Friday, Saturday at the ACCs and the NCAAs. And Wednesday night too. We'll be good on Wednesday night. Usually are. But it's ultimately the other thing that attracted me is just about performance. It's not necessarily about what we're doing. It's about getting them to perform. I haven't counted volume. I don't, every now and then I'll add it up, but just to make sure it's just not too far. Yeah, right.
One of the things that I think is so unique about your culture there too is I think a lot of people initially would look at the NC State program over the last several years and think to themselves, wow, really strong in the sprints. But, over the last 4 or 5 years, you've had 3 women go 1, 2, 3 in the mile at the ACC championships. You have one of the most dynamic 400 IM groups in the country year after year. You have the Mark Bernardino piece. You have the Brian Barnes piece. You have the Braden Holloway piece. It's a complete program, top to bottom. What does that look like in the staff meetings when you're talking about recruiting, when you're talking about bringing in the type of character people that you want to contribute to the culture?
I mean, it's just, I can't say that it's real formal. It's just all in conversation, right? We are diligent about it. Nobody goes recruited unless all eyes have seen them. You know, we went up in pairs to junior nationals to recruit. I think we had 3 coaches there on the final night, but it's just all in agreement, right? And it's a patient process. It's got to be so patient for Braden because he's got all this input. Dan Kolofsky too. I mean, he's in there too. He's just quietly one of the best coaches around. I mean, he's really good. He's got a future. But the you know, cultivating that conversation is the critical thing. It's not necessarily, and even having the argument. You need to have the argument. You can't have a solution without an argument, and it's done in a safe way. And it's really, you know, if somebody's excited about somebody, then we all need to be excited about that person. And you know, and sometimes it's a swing and a miss. And you know, if you're talking recruiting, but most of the time we're all in agreement. So it's not necessarily messy, but it's just a little chaotic, I would say, because there's opinions, right? But we leave the room, or we leave every meeting unified. And you know, at the end of the day, it's you know, I value all the coaches here, all the input that I can get. You know, it's fun. You just don't. There are many times I'll write a workout, then I'll see what, you know, Braden's doing. I mean, I like that. You know, sometimes the workouts get written on by themselves, or you know, it's just, there's so much sharing that happens. You know, it's just identifying the best way to use the resources that we have as a coaching staff, and setting ego aside. Really, I mean, that's where you are with experience. You know, Mark and myself and Braden. I mean,
It looks like it's super fun on the pool deck, and especially at meets. I mean, the enthusiasm that Braden has, he brings really an unparalleled enthusiasm to practice and meets. Has that been fun for you to be a part of? And
absolutely, it's the only way I've coached. It's the only way I've coached. It's like I said, it's the similarities. You know, the being around a championship program, or a program that have won both men's and women's in the same year, it was hard to ignore it. It was hard to, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I get an offer here, it's going to be very hard to ignore, because it's something I was familiar with, and I understood it, and I understood, you know, the approach. And yeah, it's a hands on deck. I mean, if you're in the water, you're getting coached. It doesn't matter who you are, you're getting coached, and you're getting coached well.
It's been fun to watch, and fun to be a peripheral part of, to see it, you know, manifest over the last couple of years. One of our good friends, Dan and I's good friends, is TJ Day. He's the head coach of Star Swimming in Buffalo, and knows you from the Purdue days. And he said, you know, one of the things about Brian Barnes, Mike, is he has one of the strongest value systems of any person I've ever met, not any coach I've ever met. And he said, you have one of the strongest value systems of any person he's ever met. Talk to us about what your values are, and how you incorporate them in your coaching, and what that means to the culture and the group.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we're all a function of what we value, right? And I could tie it in technically. If you value finishes, I've been talking about getting our hand to the wall for the last 12 days, and how we do it. So if it's a regular topic, it's what you value. If I say it more than once, then I really believe it. I even have said that to athletes. But then at the end of the day, it's just, I value, as, this sport is so interesting because you could have an American record in the same heat as you have an athlete just bomb, right? And how do you handle that emotion as a coach? You can't live in the highs in our profession, and you can't live in the lows. And in a weird way, I enjoy it all, right? Not in a weird way, I do enjoy it all. I enjoy the process of teaching it and sharing my experience, and the challenge of, okay, well, you have an unprecedented swim. What do you do now? Right? Well, you celebrate, and don't get me wrong, those are far more fun. And I do, but at the same time, you can't live there because it's not who you are. I would not want to be tagged to any one swim or one swimmer ever. I would like, I don't know, I would like to be tagged to somebody who just had a passion for what they do and love what they do and enjoy what they do no matter what. It's just, I value hard work. It's work works. It does. And it's not, I always say it's not rocket surgery, right? The combination of brain surgery and rocket science. It's just, sometimes it's just best to keep it simple. And I think it's more about, convincing athletes that they could do something that they don't see yet. But as a coach with experience, okay, I've been here before. And it gets trickier. Go ahead.
We've had all those athletes in our programs, even in our careers that might not have been as long or as extensive as yours, where you see that incredible talent. You see that that an athlete is different in what their capability is, but maybe from a self-efficacy standpoint or from a self-confidence standpoint, they're not ready yet to believe. So what are some of the things that you do as a staff when you encounter an athlete like that? Give us a few tips for our younger coaches as they start to, develop in their careers. They have that super talented athlete who's not yet ready to maybe take that hard work step, or to risk going out really fast, or to risk challenging themselves every day. They're just not at that step yet. How do we help them get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would, as a staff, Mark and Dan, they're going to handle those situations differently, right? But they will be savvy about it. Braden's the same thing. It's not, like I said earlier, every season's messy, right? But the great teams come together at the right moments. And, but I could share an experience from just last night. And I will tell you that every coach here tailors their workouts, right? There's some days when I'm like, Braden, you've written 5 workouts. You have so many plans going on, he's so organized, and he's so good at it. And I'm a little bit, I might write 1 or 2, but I also, like last night, we were about to get in the water, and I knew that it wasn't a night that we were going to really go, but I just wanted them to swim and be long and have good technique, and call it aerobic recovery. We did an underwater kick set, which I do, which we could talk about. You were asking that question earlier, but it wasn't real threatening. The workout wasn't real threatening, challenging, right? It's just challenge versus threat, right? it wasn't a real challenging workout, but it was, I thought, something that we needed to do. But there was one workout and I was staring at, I think I had 12 in front of me. And I just said, have you ever played in a jazz band? Because I actually, be patient here, because I am going to come at you with, you do it this way, you do it this way, you try this. Okay. You're going to go weak stroke today, right? I don't want you to take a kick of breaststroke. I said that to all the breaststrokers, right? Once again, recover the legs. We did 200 breaststroke on Monday. We don't need to, we're getting to the point where the more space I can give in between the performance breaststrokes, the better. You have to recover their legs because they won't have them. You want them to have them. But so it's just a little bit more of, tailoring to individual needs and writing specific workouts for certain people. Sometimes I often like maybe a conflict, or I can't, I have a class conflict. I got to come in at 11. Okay. Well, that means I don't need 2 hours. I only need an hour and a half with you, because they run slower in larger groups. Right. And it's, whenever it's one-on-one, it's not going to be easy. You're going to be, every stroke is going to be seen. But getting them to the belief in work ethic, the belief in, it takes time. They all cook at different rates, right? They all cook at different speeds, and sometimes they come in thinking they know what work ethic is, and then they see what's around them. They're like, oh my goodness, I thought I worked hard. And then, right, just getting them, sometimes it's a patient process for even the collegiate athlete. It's, Eddie Reese said, what do you say is, if you don't have patience, you become one, right? And it is true. But it's just something that, one of those topics, one of those values that has to be reinforced. Right? You have kids, you often don't tell them what they're good at. Tell them they work hard. You're a hard worker. And I very much take the same approach with the athletes, because, come on, we've all done the research, right? A good attitude and hardworking spirit usually is successful.
I love it. I love it. Brian, in the last 8 years, we're starting to see a little bit of a shift from West Coast collegiate dominance to now the East Coast and the ACC, particularly, with some great rivalries building between Virginia and NC State, particularly on the women's side, but the men's that rivalry will develop, no doubt, with the job that those coaches are doing down in Charlottesville, forged in Raleigh in a lot of ways. But talk to us about how you talk to your team about rivalries. Do they motivate you? Is it even a thing? I think younger coaches need to understand, like, you got to be careful with rivalries, but at the same time, it can help get your culture and your team headed in the right direction. What are some of the things that you guys are doing down in Raleigh to either stoke that fire, or is it something you don't pay attention to?
You would like to think that it's something that, no, they all know, right? It's not really part of the process. Okay, we have a big meet. Yes, we all know that. It's the day-to-day that's more the focus. Right? We don't really do a countdown to ACCs. We're aware we'll bring it up in timing. I think what's important is it coming more from our leadership in the program. You take a 5th year, and after our fall invite, I can remember with the group I was talking with and having a senior just kind of mentioning to the whole group, all right, we get back from fall invite, then we have finals week, and then we go a week of training, then we go home, and it sheds some light on how fast this goes from here on out, because it flies, because it's one thing right after another. And you really want to cultivate a culture. Culturally, you want that, the rivalries to come from the leadership, come from within the team. I would prefer to walk in behind my program or behind the program, right? Knowing that I'm in safe hands because of them versus leading them into the natatorium, right? And so I think that is something that's really more of a conversation with athletes, right?
I love that. And I love how it's determined by the leadership on the team about how important certain things are, and they get their cue from the coaching staff. Brian, you spent time in South Bend at Notre Dame, and we're close to Tim Welsh, and the legendary Tim Welsh, known widely as one of the great swimming educators in the history of our sport. What are some of the takeaways from your relationship with Coach Welsh that you had?
It's just another one of just a kind soul. He's a very kind man that gave, just relentlessly gave to his athletes. It's just, he was a professional every day, and very, that's it. His X factor was Tim, who he was. I really believe in the expression that you're hired for who you are and fired for who you are, or no, hired for what you know, fired for who you are. And you don't stay at a place for 30 years if you're not an outstanding person. It's true. He was solid gold person.
And when you have all of these great mentors and you're developing your own sense of your coaching philosophy, how did you take all of these different lessons and then weave them together to formulate your own?
Well, the moment at which I knew that I guess I was lucky, right? I always say you have a coaching family tree. And was just working with Richard, because he would teach me to have beliefs. Once again, the belief word, but once, if it's worth doing once, it's worth doing twice, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean you're right or wrong, but if you sincerely believe in it, it'll work. You have to sell it, and but that was validating, I guess. The instinctually, I had some things that I used early when I was younger, and when I would get around somebody who was far more experienced, it was like, okay, so all right, I'm not way off at times. And there's times when you are way off, but it's just the arcing things that you learn. It's the consistency, your consistent message with your program, your consistent message with your athletes, it's right, how you treat one another. It's the arcing things that really lay the details. They're kind of scenery, so to speak. If you have this arcing belief of who you are, identifying who you are. Can you hear that?
That's okay. But hey, Coach's Corner, we let the dogs out.
That's a puppy. That's an 8-week-old puppy.
Yeah, you were saying you just got that.
But yeah, so it's really more of that. And then, you know, I mean, Dan Ross, same thing. I mean, he was terrific. You know, I mean, once again, just another person that treats people well. You know, just quietly a very good coach. But then looking at, you know, where I am now, it wasn't hard to come to state. Like I identified that immediately in Braden and Mark. And when I interviewed, I identified that immediately. And so you feel the safety, right? When you get around people that you know are doing it for the right reasons.
Sure.
And they're highly motivated.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And Coach, when you think about life as a swim coach, life as a professional in this business, whether it's college or at the club level, you have a family, you have 2 children. What are some things that you do to help balance your life between what you're doing professionally and what you're doing at home? You know, I know music is a big part of who you are. You had the jazz band reference earlier. We can see the guitars in the background. You got some music posters up framed. Talk to us about how you balance professional.
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it's important to have hobbies. I think it's important to have things that you enjoy. I think it's important to exercise. I think it's important to, you know, work hard, but identify when to say when. You know, my advice to anybody getting into this profession is you know, the swim coaching, and you guys can relate to this immediately. It's like, oh, there's an open weekend, we got to book it, right? You know, one of the things I like about here, we don't book too many things on Sunday.
Yeah, Coach, tell us a little bit about the guitars.
Well, it's a total curse. It's something I just decided to start doing when I was taking my kids to music lessons, and the way I'm fascinated with skill. And so I like, you know, there was a point in my life where I got into like identifying like card magic and like the how you manipulate cards or juggling or, you know, I'm fast. I studied kinesiology undergrad. And so like, I think anything's learnable. I mean, some people will never dunk a basketball, but like, I do think there's a level of, it was a curse because it's infinite. Music is infinite. And immediately I couldn't even come close to making the shapes, and no musical background and he told me most people who start guitar your age never follow through. And I knew I was in because I couldn't do it. And I was just bored.
That is really neat. And now it's kind of blossomed because I see 2 guitars back there.
Well, that's all show. It's just curses.
Is that something maybe in a quiet moment when Brian Barnes needs to relax, you grab
exactly. That's it. It's nice to have one. Yeah, when you need it. It's relaxing.
That's awesome, man. Speaking of skill acquisition and learning and loving to watch the development of somebody learning, tell us a great underwater kick set that Coach Barnes likes to use at practice.
Well, it's usually incorporated every day. So there's some level of just, yeah, like I think it prepares you to go. Also, I think most of the time, if it's a 200 IM practice, there's a level of, you know, you have to understand that, like, what are you going to do on fly? Well, you're going to take a short number of strokes and you're going to kick underwater. Backstroke, same thing. Breaststroke, pull downs. And any good coach, I believe, is going to say, hold your breath on free. I mean, it's a 200 and you're going. So that's another skill that's trainable. I don't think it's immediate. I think there's all kinds of pathways to getting them there. But lately it's been, for me, and I've learned it from Braden, who's just, I mean, it's like his underwater component is fascinating. But he would say productive and force. My word was effective. But we mean the same thing, effective kicks. And then it's also the first two. So a lot of times I watch practice that he would do, like he does a really good thing. And I think it's twofold. I think it's, maybe the men will go 8 strokes, 4 dolphin kicks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 strokes of free. Okay. Oh, and all right, show us 45, show us 44, 100 free. No, it's a standalone. We're not repeating that. But, well, what do you get out of that? Well, they have to flutter kick like crazy, right? And so now what are you looking at? You're looking at 200 freestylers. And also you have to have effective underwaters, right? I noticed it in 2019 when I was at NCAA's and I watched the NC State 200 IMers. I'm like, they're covering a lot of ground with a very few amount of kicks. And so I talk a lot about just being effective. I wouldn't recommend this to age group swimmers, but there's, sometimes I put a stretch cord across the pool at halfway. And because I don't do it immediately. I didn't do it immediately. We got there, right? But it's not so much about the assignment last night was we did 300, 200, 100. Like, once again, it's a recovery day, 300, 200, 100 twice, round 1 with fins, round 1 without fins. And it was and the interval was easy. Interval's easy, but I think a lot of it sets them up. They don't understand that. I think you could be faster than race pace underwater. You want to be at pace underwater. You want to develop the rhythm underwater, right? If you're a butterflyer, you want to go from underwater dolphin kick to butterfly kick, which are 2 different kicks, in my opinion. But you want to find that rhythm underwater. You don't necessarily need to be, like you could coach, you can work with a very good underwater kicker and be like, all right, 9-2 for 25s. Well, are we setting up to go 38, right? Or 3,700 fly? Or let's rein that into pace, right? And make them effective. Count the kicks. I don't quite know my standard yet. I'm still kind of researching it, but I think if you can get down there and 11 kicks or fewer as a male, and then 15 or fewer as a female, I think now you have effective kicks. And then you can add speed to them at the appropriate time. But really the assignment last night wasn't speed. I think I did ask for, on the 300, go faster on the final 25, or on the every fourth 25. On the 200, every other one, just change gears slightly. And then on the 100, just call it strong. Round 1 with fins, round 2 without. And they all know how many kicks it takes to get there, to midway. But then what you're learning too is when to start your kick. And that's just an argument for every coach in America, right? I watched the really good ones. If they have good posture off the wall, the fastest ones start it the latest. Yeah, so what I'm talking about too. Some of them just push off the wall, kick. Wow. And then is it just, hey, wow, you said 6 kicks off the wall. Are you just doing that, or are they effective? Right? Is what total age group coaching would be, are you counting your kicks or making your kicks count? And it's true, right? Because you can waste your energy. Like if you're too fast underwater or too slow, if you can't shift gears mid-lap. I think you need to, exit right at race speed. And it's more about maintaining that speed than gaining any speed.
That's right. The person who slows down the least, right?
Right.
I appreciate that perspective, and I think there's a lot to that. And
Braden has so much more on this one, though. I mean,
Yeah.
he would be a good conversation to join right now, because he would a lot of resistance. A lot of reason. Most of the kick that we have done with the group that I'm in has been resistance kick. We do some aerobic kick, and it's absolutely necessary. For a long course, we'll generally do some aerobic kick, but most of the kick this year, it's probably been a change. Once again, it's just like making them count. You know, I think kicking is a pushing exercise.
what does that look like, Brian? Is that on buckets, on power towers, on cords?
Shoot board. It's a big kick with a brick board. You know, so the resistance is in front of you versus pulling a shoe. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm suspicious it will. I saw enough in our fall invite because we hit that meet tired and we were good.
Something you said there resonated with me, and it makes me feel like you're not afraid to try new things and play around with your coaching. Talk to our coaches about that.
Well, it's all over. So it's when it's around you, when you have Braden telling me what he's going to do with so-and-so and this, that, and the other, and when you have Mark and Dan, and when it's around you, you know, you're just surrounded by ideas. And yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation with another coach this morning, and I was talking about that was a bad call on my end. Like, I did not like, you know, like how I navigated coaching that person today. Now, did I get over it quickly? Absolutely. It's not, right? It's exactly the same approach you want your athletes to take, right? You can't live in any one mistake. You just have to learn and keep going, right? That's the strength of this coaching staff, right? Identify it, be humble enough, set your ego aside to say, okay, this ain't working, right? Or I approach this differently, or I got an idea, and take that risk. You know, you have to, you know, the expression, you can't do what you did last year and expect the same results. It's true. You know, goals are more about changes than anything. It's not necessarily, yeah, you can set these goals and I want to do this and I want to go this time and fine. But that's it. It's all words unless you identify, okay, the how, right? And then that's where I think we shine as a coaching staff, and okay, self-evaluation is critical, right? There's no way to, like, shoot. I mean, like, if you can identify, you're not in control of everything. And if you can, as a coach, if you can control what you can control, and you can identify that maybe you don't know what you're doing sometimes, right? Then I think it's safe. I think it's, you know, you have to take risks. You have to have the courage to bring it up when you're not happy with your group, to bring it up, address it immediately, or you just run in place, right? Then there's no progress. Nothing worse than running in place. But you know, and do it in a way that I just find security in knowing this about myself, and being surrounded by similar characteristics in a coaching staff, and like, okay, hey, I'm gonna go for it. Like, I watched one of our coaches, but if we were talking about Dan earlier, he put He put somebody from white group and black group last night. And I'm like, man, that is a really good idea. That was awesome. And it was and she performed. And it's just, that's a risk. And sold it to her, and it was successful. She walked out taller. It was great. And just, now and then I leave, I'm like, right. I leave motivated because I see that. And I gobbled that whole set. I'm like, I'm going to do that in the morning. Did it this morning, just because mostly because I was inspired by the group's effort. But it's all, I mean, you're going to find your way on how to do all of this, but you just have to have your own beliefs. You have to have your own beliefs, and you have to, identify, that, experience is helpful. It's true, right? It's fun where Mark and I and Braden, where we are in our careers, where it's fun when we see things we've never seen before. And it happens here. I don't think it's just fun, because now when you go down uncharted territory, right? Like, wait a minute, I've never been here with an athlete. This is great. Now what, coach? And then you just kind of have to reinvent things. It's just, when it's a lot easier to take those risks when you're surrounded by risk takers.
I love it. And what I'm hearing is consistency of belief.
Yeah.
Consistency of belief. And Coach, Dan is going to have his work absolutely cut out for him with this episode and getting the clips.
I'm all over the place, aren't I?
No, these are excellent. And these little tidbits will play really well, I think, for the majority of our coaching community. I want to leave you with this question, Brian, and that's, the sport is in the always evolving process of getting better. What has you most excited about our sport moving forward into 2022?
Our youth. I think it's I think we saw a little bit of a changing of the guard, so to speak, this past Olympics. I cannot believe at times, the number of club programs, just fantastic club coaches out there, and what they're able to bring to our sport. I think it's the youth. I think it's just going to be, I think we're going to be surprised. That's exactly probably my answer, right? It's the element of, okay, who's next? Who's coming in, right? You look at it. How many world records does Michael still hold? He had a lot at one point, right? Now, what he did is unprecedented, but it's crazy that, we're just getting faster. We're getting taller. We're getting stronger. The average height of the NCAA men is probably, 4 inches taller than it was 30 years ago. It's crazy, and you're just surrounded by athletes and believers.
I was watching, we were at Juniors East, and we were down in Greensboro, and Sunday night, watch the 200 fly. Incredible. When you have a 13, 14-year-old boy going 142 in the 200 fly, now you start to think, okay, what's possible? If somebody does it, somebody else is going to try to go catch him. And then somebody else is going to try to go catch him. Now, all of a sudden, we're the best 200 fly country in the world.
I just don't think our sport is old enough for us to have any idea what our limits are. What are we, competitive swimming, wall to wall swimming? 130 years old, are we? I don't even know, but it's just, yeah, I always get curious on like, okay, is one stroke catching back freestyle? Like at what point is backstroke, maybe in 100 years, backstroke might be faster. Who knows? Right? It just depends.
So exciting. So exciting to think that way, and certainly sheds light on why you've been successful as a coach. Brian, we have kept you for an hour and 10 minutes. This has been an awesome episode. I know you want to get back to your team. We're so appreciative to have you on Coach's Corner, and all the best to the Wolfpack Nation and NC State Swimming this year. Congratulations on the early success, and we look forward to watching your team the rest of the season.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks a
so
lot.
much, Coach.
Yep.